Hello, my name is Mark Melstein, and I'm Director of the Center for Sustainable Global Enterprise at the Cornell University S.C. Johnson College of Business. For nearly 2 decades, the center has been conducting applied research and teaching on the growth opportunities companies pursue through competitive strategies that address the world's most pressing social and environmental challenges. I want to welcome all of you and thank you for joining us for the 6th Annual Cornell Business Impact Symposium. Tonight, we are having the second of 2 panels we've had today. The symposium will culminate on Saturday with finals for the first Cornell Impact Investing competition, for which we hope you will join us. CBIS is only possible because of the hard work of a lot of people who deserve recognition. First, I want to thank the students from the 7 graduate and undergraduate clubs that collaborated with the center to organize CBIS. I also want to thank my center colleagues Monica Twinar and Sophia Abdulhamid for all their efforts that make this possible each year. Additionally, we want to thank eCornell for enabling us to hold this event virtually for the 2nd year in a row. Finally, I want to thank Corning for their sponsorship of CBIS this year. I want to remind everybody who's joining us tonight that you can use the chat function at any time to post questions you may have for the panelists. With that, I want to turn it over to Oliver Eccleston from the Social Enterprise Group at Cornell, who will introduce tonight's session. Oliver?
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining our panel on pathways to social and environmental careers. My name is Oliver. I'm a junior studying industrial and labor relations and current co-president of Social Enterprise Group at Cornell. As a group of students passionate about social impact, SEGC provides pro bono consulting to various social enterprises and companies each semester. We work with a variety of large and small clients with our portfolio, including SE Johnson, B-Lab, Ithaca Reuse, Just Capital, and more. From this, students in SEGC understand the need to make the most positive impact in our future careers, and our desire to learn more was a driving force behind this panel. We're extremely happy to have the opportunity to hear from inspiring Cornell alumni in a variety of impactful careers. And I want to thank CBIS for making this panel a reality. Now, without further ado, I want to introduce Monica Twinar, the Associate Director of the Center for Sustainable Global Enterprise at Cornell's S.E. Johnson College of Business, who will be our moderator for tonight.
Thanks, Oliver. Appreciate that. And I want to thank all of our panelists and everybody joining us this evening. So thank you for taking time out of your schedule. I think this will be a fun conversation. I want to thank and welcome our panelists. So first, Julie Casabianca, who is with Renewable Energy Alliance Bayer, REBA. Marty Curran, who is with the Nestle Waters North America. John Kim, who is with One Row. And Georgia Maloney, who is with Marsh & McLellan Companies. So thank you all for joining us. Because it is a career panel, I thought it'd be great to start with everybody's story, to hear a little bit about your background, to share that with the audience, so that we can kind of dig into it later. And if folks have questions, they can put questions in the chat and direct them to specific panelists or to the group at large. So why don't we start with Marty? Why don't you share with us your story and your journey in sustainability?
Sure thing. Thanks, Monica. So my name is Marty Curran, and like Monica mentioned, right now I work for, actually, as of 2 weeks ago, Blue Triton Brands, which is what Nestle Waters has been renamed to, but it got a little complicated, didn't need to correct it. But it's still the same company that it's always been. And I graduated in 2015, 2016 over that winter from Cornell in natural resources. And when I started my collegiate career, I really thought I was going to be an environmental lawyer and realized pretty quickly that that wasn't going to be the path for me. Tried out a few different things within the environmental space. I was an activist and organizer for a little while, realized that that wasn't going to be good when the first ballot referendum that I had failed because it rained on election day. Didn't think that that was going to be the sort of impact and worries that I wanted to have career-wise. And then I worked at the Goodale Lab with Professor Christine Goodale. Probably a lot of you have taken Intro to Ecology, doing research with her, but realized that that wasn't where my passions were. And so I ended up in corporate sustainability, where the pace of change was a lot faster than I had thought it was going to be, and I've really loved working there for the past 6 years.
Can you just talk just a little bit, Marty, about how you actually got that job initially? Like, what was your job search like, if you can remember back then?
Yeah, it was painful. That's as much as I remember. No, I actually started as an intern for Nestle Waters North America during my junior year at Cornell and had applied to every company under the sun that had some sort of environmental internship program and ended up choosing between Nestle Waters and Orvis, the fishing gear company, which sometimes I think about what my life would be like if I took that job instead. But really wanted to, when I had those options, wanted to end up working for the place that had the biggest challenge. That was sort of what I was gung-ho about. And being a bottled water company, primarily, I thought that was going to be the biggest, grittiest problem to solve. And so I wanted to dive in sort of headfirst into the corporate sustainability challenge.
Cool. And so in your current role, like, how do you spend your time? In a typical day or typical week, something like that?
Yeah, I sort of have three main functions within the company. I'm the analyst for our packaging strategy, then I head up our climate change strategy, and I also run up our reporting strategy currently. So it's a lot of, depending on the day, it's a lot of math or a lot of writing, and it's a lot of fun always. But, you know, we're really working to pick up some big challenges in the climate space and continuing the work that we've done already in collecting more plastic and incorporating recycled material into our bottles.
Great, thanks. I'm going to turn it over to Julie. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey?
Great, thanks, Monica. And yes, my name is Julie Casabianca, and I'm a manager on the supply chain and international collaboration team at the Renewable Energy Buyers Alliance. And at REBA, I help support companies that are looking to procure renewable energy to help address their own loads and their loads of their supply chain partners, whether it's in the US or internationally. And I have a background in international development and clean energy programs. I started out as an intern with an organization, a membership organization called the Society for International Development in Washington, D.C. From there, I got experience and exposure working with a number of different organizations involved in international development, and then transitioned to an associate role with one of those consulting firms to support USAID programs, primarily in energy and environmental management. I then decided it was time to go back to grad school, and I had got my master's from Cornell in regional planning from the City and Regional Planning Department, and also had the opportunity to participate in the Sustainable Global Enterprise Immersion Program. And then from there, I also had the opportunity to study Indonesian and attend an international workshop through the CRP program to go to Indonesia. And then following graduation, I really wanted to work abroad. And so went overseas, went back to Indonesia, and took a couple of internships and really just started networking. And then eventually got a position as a consultant with the Asian Development Bank, where I was working on consulting with them for national governments looking at clean energy policy in Indonesia and helping develop solar farm in Cambodia and some other programs in the region. And then after a few years there, I decided I wanted to come back to the U.S. and help make more of an impact here. So that's when I joined REBA. And right now I'm excited to be working with a number of corporates and kind of learning from them what their challenges are in procuring renewable energy, and helping to find ways that we can green the grid together and help them solve their challenges.
So I have a quick follow-up question there, Julie, because I'm often advising students as they're thinking about their careers, and in thinking about careers in renewable energy or the energy industry, often people are worried and concerned that they need a technical degree in order to work in this space. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I didn't hear that you're an engineer or anything like that. So
right.
What are your thoughts on that?
That is a great question. And I think I have also, worried throughout the career path, do I need a technical background? Should I have gone back to engineering school? But I would say that it's not necessary. I think as long as you're able to kind of communicate, the big picture items and potentially serve as a bridge between the engineers and, in my case, the renewable energy buyers, the corporate positions. I think that can serve you well. And a lot of my path has also been, more in the policy realm. And so less in the technical, engineering space. But I think if you have an interest or a background in policy, or just skills in writing and stakeholder engagement, I think you can do just fine in the energy space. Yeah.
Great, thanks. All right, turning it over to you, John.
Great. I think I'd have this mute thing down by now. Hi, my name is John Kim. I'm very happy to be here, and I graduated in 2001, which now makes me realize that it's been 20 years. So, but I'm very happy to be here. I'm currently the Chief Strategy Officer and Head of Impact at One Row, a small strategy consulting firm that helps leaders launch, accelerate, and expand purpose-driven ventures. We're based in Boston, but I actually live and work from Montpelier, Vermont. We work with a really broad range of clients, which is reflective of the work I've done around my career. So it's been really fun. We work with government agencies, USAID one being a plant-based food startup, a 3D printed house startup called Mighty Buildings, looking to kind of address the housing availability crisis and climate crisis, AI-powered mining search engine. So a lot of fun and interesting projects, and not only startups, but some nonprofits and foundations as well. And prior to One Row, I spent about 10 years in corporate responsibility roles, about 8 years at the Walt Disney Company in their corporate citizenship team. And this is one of the things that you'll learn, is that it's called something else. It's called something different at every company. So, and then I spent 2 years at Herman Miller at their sort of CSR function, though it was, it was sort of an interesting role that kind of cut across a lot of different functions. And then prior to that, I spent actually most of my career in the international development space. So I did my graduate degree in international development policy, served in the Peace Corps, worked in Malawi for the World Food Program, and in South Africa for some food security type efforts. And that brings me back to Cornell. My first job after Cornell was I worked in DC, where I thought my undergrad focus was actually more on social policy, and I thought I'd be focusing on sort of domestic US-based issues. And I worked, so my first job outside of Cornell was at the food bank that serves DC metro areas. And I was working with after-school programs around DC, Northern Virginia, and Maryland. So I loved my Cornell experience, and that brings me to today, everything I just covered.
Great. Well, thank you. All right, Georgia.
I'm back. Hi, everybody. I'm Georgia Maloney. I attended Cornell undergrad. I was class of 07. I have my undergrad degree in communication. I started my career in nonprofit marketing and communications. I worked for several years at a nonprofit in New York City called City Parks Foundation that did free public programming in education, sports, and arts programming in city parks throughout the 5 boroughs of New York. Decided to go back and get my MBA, and after careful debate, I came back to Cornell for round 2. And I also did the SGE immersion program and all things SGE that I could do. And really was pretty set on some sort of corporate sustainability, CSR, name the acronym, role from the outset. Even was tried to encourage to maybe broaden that search a little bit at times, which I didn't really do. I did my MBA internship at an organization called Ceres, CERES, in Boston, working on their company network team, working with corporations on helping to integrate sustainability into their bottom line. So I mostly did a lot of research, but it was really, really educational and really kind of set me up for going into my second year of business school, or really concentrated my search. I'm sure we'll get more, I guess, specifics on the job search maybe later and on, but if
I'm going to ask you, Georgia, tell us about that job search.
So I was probably in Monica's office like at least twice a week. I really talked to, I'd say the basics of my job search was I talked to anybody and who would listen to me or talk to me. And I had informational interviews with as many people as I could, meet from any industry. I was industry agnostic. I didn't care for the most part where I went. I just wanted to talk to anybody and gathered all of the information. As John mentioned, there's so many differences. And I think maybe we'll get into this on how different companies structure their sustainability, CSR, et cetera, teams. It's so different from place to place. So one of the things I did was just gathered all this information as what does it look like here? What does it look like there? How do different companies approach this? And that was really beneficial as I started to have interviews. I also, spread beyond, just people in those roles, but I worked with the rest of my network as well. So I had a broad network, particularly in New York City. I had friends at a whole bunch of different companies. And whenever I would go back or have dinner or something with somebody, I would say, hey, this is kind of what I'm looking for. This is what I want to do. I think your company actually has this, do you know that person, or could you find that person, or could I introduce, could I talk to them? And that often worked. And I just kind of made my way around, and I ultimately ended up getting this role at Marsh McLennan. We have also recently rebranded. We've dropped the and the companies. So we're just Marsh McLennan, also within the last couple of weeks. So very, very new. And I had actually a friend from undergrad who worked at the company and got me an introduction to the hiring manager. And that is how I ended up getting in that role. And I started in a CSR communications position. So kind of really a perfect match between my undergrad, what I had done before school, and then the MBA. And I've actually been on 3 teams in 3 different roles in the last almost 5 years. And I think that really speaks to how this industry has really evolved in that amount of time, and the resources and the approach that companies are taking to that. So I sat in our CSR team, which is primarily philanthropy and corporate volunteerism, working on communications and reporting. I then moved to our central internal communications group, broadening our ESG reporting and working across more teams from diversity, sustainability, et cetera. I now sit in legal, and I am the ESG reporting lead. And my job has kind of 2 big buckets. I manage all of our ESG reporting across the enterprise. And then I also manage all of our internal sustainability operations. So working with real estate, travel, technology, and procurement to integrate sustainability into all of their, day-to-day operations. So.
Oh, great. So I've got a question kind of from the audience, and it's kind of one of the questions that we had already. And that is, do you need to have an academic background in sustainability to land a job in this space? And I'm going to add, some of you have graduate degrees. And so do you need a graduate degree as well to get into this space? So I don't know if somebody wants to start us off, or any thoughts on that in particular? Looks like John, maybe?
Sure, yeah. And I would say about 10 to 15 years ago, I would say maybe it wasn't necessary. And I wouldn't say it's necessary still, but I think unless it was like a really specialized skill, like, needing some sort of technical expertise. But I think it has become, unfortunately, sort of very common to have that graduate degree in terms of kind of the playing field and what the expectation is for a lot of people. I think that, obviously it's different for more entry-level roles, but I think as you get into the further along your career, I think it is sort of seen as just kind of table stakes for folks. Just kind of where we are in education and society generally right now. It's like the graduate degree is the undergrad degree. So I don't know if that's helpful, but I think in terms of the actual technical knowledge and experience, I mean, for me, I can't say I use much of my graduate degree in my work these days. I did a like econometrics policy degree, really focused degree, and I don't do a lot of that anymore. But I think that, for me, the biggest thing is getting the experience, because it's still a relatively young field, right? And I think there's still, because it's different things everywhere. So if you can bring lots of different experiences from, if it's a nonprofit in different countries, different industries, I think that to me is actually the most valuable thing that someone could bring from someone who's an applicant to a role. Like, I really love and value the person who's had a lot of different experiences, because I think having those perspectives is really helpful for doing this type of work well.
I have a slightly maybe different perspective. I think it sort of depends. I've seen so many people trying to move into this space after working for quite a few years. And in that instance, I think having a grad degree, at least for me, was very helpful, because you can kind of lean on that a little bit. I just went to business school. I have all these skills. I learned all these things. But if you're starting right out in the field right away in undergrad, like out of undergrad in an entry-level role, and you kind of come up in corporate sustainability or CSR, I don't know that you do need one, because you're starting right out in the very beginning. And there are more and more of those roles now than I think that there used to be in those junior type positions. So it really kind of, I've talked to a lot of people that are looking at both. And if you're coming out and you have that experience right from the start, I don't know that an MBA is going to help you, because as John said, I think that the hands-on skills and the day-to-day is going to be more important.
Great. Thanks. Julie?
Well, I was just going to add that I think, kind of building on what John said, I think experience is really key. And I would just say that, even if you are thinking about a graduate degree, I would suggest, getting experience first, because sustainability is such a wide field. You could have interest in energy or water or, policy or health. And I think, getting some experience in those different areas, seeing what interests you and where your strengths are, can then help you also choose a grad program that is more aligned with the skills that you want to have in that field, and your interests. So I would say make sure to get some experience under your belt first, and then see if a graduate program is right for you.
Yeah, as I think the only non-graduate school person on the call, what I've sort of figured for my own career and what I've been thinking about is that I'll go back to grad school when I feel like I'm not learning anything new at my company. And I do have one of those sort of entry-level roles that I got straight out of undergrad as an analyst, and I've built that up to tackle more things. And because it's such a growing field, if you get your foot in the door, you can get a lot out of it in the first place. So I think grad school is in the future, but there's a lot to do in the meantime for a lot of folks.
Great. Wow. Those are all great answers. And I think it is such a growing and changing field right now that there's just a lot of different opportunities. So one of the things, so we have a lot of students on the call, or watching our call here, some from Cornell and others who are from other schools. We also have folks who are working and, looking to pivot. So thinking about your experiences at Cornell, was there anything in particular that you think, any experiences here that were instrumental in achieving, helping you achieve your career goal? And then for those who are not at Cornell, what are some of the key skills that you think might be helpful for them to think about developing as they try to pivot into this space? So it's kind of two parts of the question, so feel free to answer one or the other or both. So I don't know if there's one of you want to jump in and start.
I can kick us off, because I think there's a really important soft skill to have in the sustainability, especially in the corporate sustainability field, that I felt I really picked up from my time at Cornell. And it wasn't in the classroom, it was actually living in one of the co-ops. And there was a lot of disagreement and a lot of sort of coming to mutual decisions. And I find that skill is what I bring to the table the most in time discussing things with the finance team or our natural resources team or our engineering team. Being able to work across different opinions is huge, 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 huge.
and I will build on that and say being able to explain sometimes technical things to people who don't have any background in sustainability or any of that, but they are making the decisions for the company. And I'm talking C-suite people, and being in a room and having to explain what is net zero, what is carbon neutral, what is our competitor doing, how are we doing something that's different. This stuff is evolving all the time, and the definitions change. You know, everyone kind of does their own version of what they think net zero is. And so, which I'm not going to get into, but it is, you know, being able to then explain that to a CFO or somebody when they want to understand and as basically as possible so they can make the best decisions. And that's really important.
Yeah, and I'll just sort of, pile on to that. I think in my work with, corporate energy buyers, they're working across the company, convincing C-suite for a deal, working with finance and accounting, and the sustainability folks, and, having those people skills and being able to negotiate and, know how to change your message as needed, and pivot, I think is really important. And I think, that can be learned anywhere. I would say, going back to the Cornell question, I think for me, looking at, an international career, I think it was really instrumental to be at Cornell, where there are resources, like in the CRP program, we had international workshops. Cornell also has very strong, foreign language programs. There's opportunities for fellowships and scholarships to travel or to learn languages. So I would definitely encourage folks to look into those either at Cornell or at your own school.
Great. And I'll just add, it was all of those things. And I also got the opportunity to do some international work travel through Cornell. But I'll just mention it was one professor who was super influential for my time there, and his name was Don Barr. He was in College of Human Ecology, and he unfortunately passed in 2008. But he really helped me to think kind of critically about race and power and about responsibility, but also ability we all had to make kind of the change we wanted to see from a policy perspective, but also in people and in terms of how you communicate with individuals and see the world from different perspectives and all that wonderful stuff. So he was a really powerful just person that I was very fortunate to have come across during my time at Cornell.
Yeah, I think the sustainability issues are so diverse and they're so big that ability to really think critically, think in kind of bigger picture, but then also you have to be able to dive down deep into some of the nitty gritty stuff as well. So, that ability to think critically, I think is really important in this space. So we have a lot of questions coming in already. So I'm going to try to work some of them in, and I see we're probably not going to get to a lot of the questions that we had prepared beforehand. But we do have a question regarding salary, and if there's a trade-off between choosing a career in sustainability versus a career in something like big tech, finance, those sorts of things. Anybody want to tackle that?
Well, first of all, you can have a sustainability career in big tech or finance. So that's one thing. I know what you meant, but those roles especially are just really expanding, especially when you get into, ESG investing and that whole side of things. I think it really depends. Obviously, if you were going to go to a nonprofit or something, it's probably the salary will be a little bit lower, but you never know. I mean, I have a friend who is pretty senior at the NRDC, the Natural Resources Defense Council, and she does very well. So it's kind of, I think maybe in the beginning, it depends. It's a really big, it depends question. And it also depends even at the corporate level. what the company is investing in it and what the importance of it is, right? Do they see it as equal to somebody in the finance function or somebody in talent management or something along those lines? Then it's, will be comparable. If it's still sort of a nice to have, something we feel like we should be doing, then maybe it won't be. There are some salary studies that I could put in the links to, or Monica maybe could send out, that are done in the field that are kind of interesting, and they do show that it is a pretty big range still. But yeah.
Anybody else want to jump in? All right. Oh, John?
I'll just kind of add to that in that, it's a matter of what your expectation is, right? If yes, you can find the ESG jobs in the finance companies, but if you're trying to compare it to those kind of straight out of either business school or undergrad, even in Wall Street, it's not going to be the same, likely. But it's all about your own expectations. But I think over the years, what I've seen in about the 10 years or so that I've been on the company side, I feel like I've seen the salaries increase in terms of as there's more companies, more roles, there's more talent, there's more competition for the best talent. I think you're seeing the salaries sort of reflect that. So I think the trend is going in the right direction to draw and attract the people, the best and the brightest into these sort of roles. So
I would also add, as I talk to many students, looking at these opportunities and trying to make decisions, is it's also about, what's meaningful for you. How do you want to spend your time? Where do you want to be spending, is a work week really 40 hours a week? No. Where do you want to be spending 50, 60 hours of your work week? What do you want to be doing with that? So I think there are other things to take into consideration. Yeah, you have bills to pay, you have loans to pay back, there's all of that. You want to make sure you're earning enough for that. But I would also argue that there are other things to take into consideration. Another question that has come in is about, so the question is, what can you recommend for marginalized groups that are hoping to work in these spaces but seem to be consistently coming to closed doors due to lack of experience or education? And so I'm going to broaden that a little bit in terms of, as people are, if they're working in their, wherever they are currently, how can they make that pivot? Are there things that they can do within their organization, or maybe there's some trainings? And I guess I'm going to add on another kind of part of another question here is, are there certifications or other things that maybe, it's not, going back for a master's degree or something like that? Are there other things that people might be able to do or take advantage of to help make that switch? I see some nodding, but does somebody want to hop in on that?
I would say, as far as if you're already working, if you're already in the workforce, if you are at a company or a rather large company, there are a lot of things that you could potentially volunteer to do off the side of your desk, right? So most companies, again, larger companies will have employee resource groups. A lot of times there will be green teams or volunteering groups, anything that you can kind of get involved in addition to your regular job that will help you, A, meet the right people, and then B, get a little bit more experience, in that area. If you're on a company green team, then maybe you have an opportunity to work with the facilities team in your office, and what are they doing, to green the pantry or eliminate plastic or, encourage recycling, et cetera, et cetera. These are some of the things that sustainability teams are working on, but they use colleagues in the offices to help facilitate those initiatives. So that would be one thing that I would recommend. If you're not at a company that has something like that, there are plenty of ways to volunteer. I volunteered with the Nature Conservancy and the Rainforest Alliance when I was applying to business school and when I was also at a nonprofit, but they both work with a wide range of companies and corporations that help sponsor their events and their work. That was a way to get exposure, especially in New York, and I'm sure in other cities there are different sustainability groups and professional organizations to get involved in. Many of them are on LinkedIn. So a lot of it is just kind of getting in the door, broadening the network. I know Monica, the Cornell works with Net Impact. Net Impact also has a professional network in many different cities. They, at least the one in New York, offers doing pro bono help with different groups. And so you could kind of volunteer to do that. So I think there's a pretty range of things that you could kind of volunteer to help get yourself experience in addition to your regular job.
Great. Anybody got anything else? Thoughts? All right. Oh, Julie?
I was just going to say maybe going back to some of the earlier discussion about networking and reaching out to people, expanding your groups, expanding your network, being willing to learn about new trends, new developments. Study up on what is net zero, what is the next trend or coming down the pike, so you can really be knowledgeable and maybe see, who's focused on the new trends and who might be hiring or looking for new talent. And then I think, we talked earlier about, is a grad degree necessary? And I think, there's more discussion about diversity and equity and inclusion. I think there's also the acknowledgement that sometimes, looking for somebody with a grad degree can be restrictive. And I think groups are starting to recognize that and starting to realize that, maybe it's not necessary. Maybe it's more the combination of experience and skills over the years. So I have seen that kind of starting to be a trend. And so I'm hopeful that maybe that will, bring down some of the barriers for entry into these jobs as well.
Thanks. John?
I'll just add one more thing, and I don't know if it's totally relevant for this, but and I'm not going to say, it's going to sound like that start a blog is going to be my answer, but it's not. But in 2 occasions for myself, I guess it's more around, I'd say while you're doing your search, even if you're feeling like the pivot is really difficult and you're just running into roadblocks, and this is kind of relevant to everything I say in work and life, is continue to pursue your sort of passion projects, but things that really keep you excited, and if it's overlaps with your personal and professional sort of goals and where you want to go, like, great. So like, for example, in 2008, I was looking to break into or 2007 or something like that, corporate responsibility world. It was still kind of newish. And so I just started, and I was interested in this sort of intersection between like soccer and CSR. Anyway, so I started writing about it. I just wrote a blog, and while the blog itself wasn't anything special, I was able to point to it when I did talk to people and say, hey, this is what I'm interested in doing. Like, this is an example of something I'm doing. Like, hey, let's talk. Can I learn more about what you do? And that actually contributed to my getting my first role in CSR, Herman Miller, eventually. Similarly, I really love bikes, and I was really interested in kind of the intersection between bikes and kind of purpose-driven brands, because that's kind of what I study and do in work, and didn't really see any bike brands that were really mission-driven. Anyway, I started writing about it, and then that helped me get into. I ended up leading it into a role where I'm now serving as an advisor for a electric cargo bike company. Anyway, so it's like, those were not my intentions, but like just continuing to just do things that were what I was interested in, that was intersected with my professional, but also personal interests, kind of helped just like keep me doing stuff and pointing to, having things to point to that could lead to the people that would be interested in, that I'd be interested in talking to, and then who they, I guess they'd be interested in talking with. So blogs are good, but not the answer.
That's great, though, because I think there are different opportunities where you can kind of educate yourself at the same time and create something that is meaningful and you can point to. And so there's a question regarding, volunteer opportunities. And do folks have like any suggestions in terms of, how do you find that right opportunity? We have a question from the audience in terms of how to figure out what that looks like.
I would say one of the things that I run into in corporate sustainability a lot is the idea that while it's really great that you're working in a field that you're passionate about, it can also be totally overwhelming to work in something that you care so deeply for, and you can get a lot of pressure put on yourself that way, where it feels like this all-encompassing thing that's your job, your personal passion, and like what you have to do to save the planet. And so I'm a big advocate when I talk to other folks in the field of getting outside of the sustainability space for volunteer work. I do STEM education and then some like alumni interviewing stuff for Cornell and for my high school as volunteer projects, just to break out of that space and get a little clarity and headspace from the things that I think about all day, while still sort of building some of the soft skills that are really good. And it runs your network too beyond the sustainability space, and meet a lot of new people that way.
Yeah, that's great. I think working in this space, you can put a lot of burden on yourself as we're all working to make the world a better place. John, did you have something to add?
Yeah. I guess it would depend on when they say volunteering and kind of what they mean a little bit, because when I think about this is not for everyone, but things like the Peace Corps or, AmeriCorps or EDF Climate Corps, like those, sort of substantive experiences, I think are great ways to just obviously spend a year or 2 years or whatever of your life kind of immersed in a place or a topic. But I think they're also really demonstrate to people who, you might be interviewing with, that you are really committed and can be committed and commit a year of your life or 2 years of your life to a particular cause or issue or whatever. So anyway, I think those sort of experiences, not for everyone, but I think if you can find, even if they're really short but intensive volunteer experiences that can sort of demonstrate and be illustrative of your interests, I think those can be really powerful as part of your sort of job searching journey.
And a lot of nonprofits will have young professionals groups or some sort of young professionals. That's what I did for the Nature Conservancy in New York, which is since dissolved, I think. But a lot of groups will have some sort of young professionals board or something along those lines, which is a good opportunity to get involved.
Oh, that's a great idea. So we have another question, and this question is actually specifically for Marty, but I'm going to make it broader because it is about, working for a company that has bottled water. You probably expected this question. And how can you do, sustainability work for a company that's not known for, being environmentally sustainability and thinking about that social or environmental impact. And so, but making it broader. So Marty and Georgia, both of you work at more traditional companies that aren't necessarily known for sustainability. So how do you kind of reconcile that in what you do in your career versus John and Julie, you guys both work for mission-driven or impact-driven organizations. So I want to dive into that a little bit and talk about those differences. So we'll start with Marty.
Yeah, so and as I mentioned in my intro, what really drove me when I was looking for a career was where I could make the biggest difference. And that's sort of how I ended up reconciling working in the bottled water space with sort of my personal sustainability ethos was, where can I go and, make the biggest noise? What has the biggest opportunity for change? How can I get in there, get my hands dirty and solve big problems? And, it's not always easy, but being a purist wouldn't get your foot in the door talking about finding a job search. If I came across, I don't drink bottled water in my personal life. I have perfectly good tap water. I have a reusable bottle that I carry everywhere. But if I came in like that, it wouldn't be somebody that has a sustainability mindset solving those problems necessarily. I've always said that if it's not me, it's the marketing team doing sustainability communication. And I'd rather be the person doing it and doing it in a scientifically sound manner, you know?
Great. Georgia?
Yeah, I think, how do I put this? Yeah, if you're at a traditional company, as I am, and I don't know if I meant, people probably aren't familiar with Marsh McLennan. We are a professional services firm with 4 main businesses: Oliver Wyman, Mercer, Guy Carpenter, and Marsh. We do insurance brokerage and consulting and advisory. We do a lot, actually, of advisory in the ESG space, and that is continuing to evolve quite a bit, actually. But yeah, being in a traditional firm, I think that, I don't want to say you have to check your ideals at the door, but you have to be prepared that there are going to be, you're not going to get always everything that you think should absolutely happen. And there's going to be, I think Marty mentioned this, a negotiation skills and knowing when to kind of accept what it's going to be best for the company, even though, again, what I do in my personal life with very low waste and composting and all of those types of things, I know that for 76,000 people in 100 countries, the decisions that we're making as a corporation have to be a little bit different. And you do have to consider a lot of different things. And so if, you know, it's not always going to be for everybody. If you feel that you're very, very passionate and could never compromise any of the ideals that you have and feel that, you know, really want to get out there and make a ton of change, then perhaps a sustainable role in the traditional corporation is not the place. However, I will say in the 5 years at my company, I feel like our approach to what we're doing has evolved a lot. And I'm really proud of being able to be a part of that. And even though it has felt sometimes like we're not going anywhere, you know, I've had many of these conversations with my boss and his boss, and she said, look at where we were a year ago. I know it doesn't feel day to day like we have really moved the needle, but look at that senior meeting a year ago and look at that senior meeting yesterday. And if you kind of do that and step back, and I've done that a few times, to say, okay, we really have, you know, moved things along, and I am proud of that, even if it may have felt slow at times. So I think it's always possible, but it really is about your expectations, I think.
Yeah, and just to add to that, you know, it's all about where you feel like you can make the most change. So I mentioned I was an activist as an intern in college, and doing political organizing was a lot slower than working in the corporate sustainability space. But I have the patience for working in the corporate sustainability space. And so it's just about figuring out what gets you most excited, as well as where you're going to be able to feel like you're making a difference. And as Georgia said, that comparison to a year before, what it looked like, or when I started 6 years ago now, what the conversations we were having at the time looked like, it's a world of difference. And it still takes people pushing from the outside, but it also takes people pushing from the inside.
Great. So John or Julie, let's think about it from the other perspective.
Well, I'd just add that, you know, every company in every industry basically needs to be thinking about sustainability at some level. And I think this past year has shown, especially around diversity and inclusion and equity issues, like I think a lot of companies got a wake up call, like, oh, okay, maybe we were doing the basic minimum, or maybe not even that. But obviously with the roles and the hiring, you're seeing a lot of companies throwing a lot of resources behind that now, which is great. But I think, you know, there's, to what Marty said, I think finding the opportunities to be at the places that really do need to make the biggest shifts, are really interesting opportunities. Like, I mean, I'm working with some mining companies now, and I've like, what kind of blows my mind sometimes that I'm doing that. But these are companies that I know are trying to do mining better, and just kind of learning more about, okay, well, for an electric future, we need all these minerals that these mining companies are producing. You know, you see Tesla like buying a mining company, or essentially are investing in mining. Like, these things need to happen, and if they're going to happen, it might as well try to be done better, right? So I think there's, maybe the companies, like basically every company needs help. So I think if you can find to get into those kind of ugly and dirty businesses and be part of the solution, like that is where you can make some really significant impact.
And maybe, I was gonna say, maybe I could add a little on the kind of NGO or mission-driven side. I think sometimes there's maybe this ideal that it's going to be, this romantic job, and you're going to save the world right away, and you're going to see impact faster. But I think there's similar challenges as within working in corporates, and you have to get alignment, you have to get funding. A lot of times, you're always kind of chasing the funding, whether it's membership dues or responding to proposals for funding or philanthropic funds. So there's always the constant, looking for funds for your programs, and I think it's some of the similar challenges as to working in a corporate setting.
Yeah, I think sometimes people forget too, within mission-driven organizations, you still need somebody who is, doing the finance, somebody who's doing HR, somebody who's doing the marketing, where it's not, they're not doing, the work in and of itself is not like CSR work. It is work for the organization to move them forward. So there are definitely a lot of variety. There's great variety of roles even within mission-driven organizations. So something to think about. I want to make sure we've got time to kind of dive into resources. So as people are thinking about pivoting or even trying to, to get into this space to begin with, just starting their career. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about resources for people who are trying to get into this space. And so wondering if you guys have some recommendations of places, websites, things to look at as people are thinking about these opportunities. And I will go with whoever wants to start first. So
I can go because my suggestions were first on the list that we wrote down. My two favorites are Ed's Clean Energy and Sustainability Jobs List and Josh's Water Jobs. They're weekly emails. Josh might not be as weekly, but Ed comes in every Sunday, and it's a whole list of different opportunities within the field, not all focused in the corporate space, and then ranged from entry level or internships to, mid-career or director level positions. And I found it really useful for me in thinking about my next steps and what those might look like and what sort of skills I might want to build in my current role to get me to that next space. And I send it to, all of my interns and things that are looking for jobs right after graduation.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that one. I'm not as familiar with Josh's Water Resources. What's that one?
Similar to Ed's, it doesn't come out quite as frequently, but really focused on the water sustainability space. And being in my industry, that's where a lot of the folks who come in the beginning of their careers end up wanting to go in the end. So gotten familiar with it that way.
Oh, cool. Very nice. Thanks. Other resources that people want to share?
Yeah, I'll just name a few that I've followed over the years. Ellen Weinreb has a great jobs board. Also, generally sort of mid-career, but sometimes it will include the entry-level roles. Another one called sustainabilityleads.com, which just is kind of a nice list of jobs generally. And then one I just came across recently, it's more of a PDF that has, I just thought it had great information in it, as well as lists of different resources. But Katie Cross from Duke just put together a great job searching resource she made publicly available that I think has a lot of great information in it for anyone who's looking to get into the space.
I don't know. So Katie Cross also has a Twitter feed where she posts jobs as well. So that's also, if anybody's on Twitter, I think it's just at Katie_Cross. But kind of like Ellen Weinrab just posts a lot of different opportunities.
I really like a site called, it's Reconsidered, and it's reconsidered.co. And then it has a private LinkedIn group that you can join that's a really good group of professionals called, I believe it's Reconsidering Business. They have I believe, a bi-weekly newsletter that I really like, which is both information about the industry. They kind of curate up-to-date articles and things about the space. And then they also have a pretty broad jobs list. And that is also global, which I think is unique. A lot of them are not. The woman who runs it is American, and she's based in the Netherlands. So that's kind of an interesting perspective. I really like that. And then I think these both have jobs, but more if you're just looking kind of general news and trends and things like that, just to learn more. GreenBiz is a really good one. They have I think they're up to like 5 or 6 newsletters a week. They have quite a few, and just a lot of really good, interesting analysis and information from renewables to agriculture and everything in between. And then I'm going to get this wrong. Boston College Center for Corporate Citizenship. I think it's 4 C's. They also have a newsletter, but then curate a lot of kind of just information and trends and things like that is helpful to learn.
Great. A lot of stuff out there. Julie, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I was going to just say in the international space, one great resource is devex.com, which has jobs and articles and trends and other resources. And then also the Society for International Development has a number of working groups. There's also a young professionals group that folks can join. And they also list all of their institutional members. So you can then search those for jobs. I don't think there's a direct jobs board, but you can at least go through the institutional members and go direct to their sites. So
I think that's a good point is, and I sometimes forget to mention it, is to kind of look at different associations and see who's a member of that association. If you're starting to think about, which companies or organizations do I want to target? And if you look at, a member organization, you can start to develop a list of potential target organizations. So thanks for reminding me of that, Julie. I think that's an untapped resource and a different way to kind of go about looking for opportunities. So it looks like we're coming up on time. So I just wanted to give one last minute here to see if folks had any, last tips or recommendations for people as they are trying to make their foray into this space. Any last thoughts for folks? Or maybe we've said it all.
I think just do your research and then start applying. Apply to anything that looks interesting and is aligned with your passions. And, you can always learn more during an interview, but I would just say go out there and apply.
I think my last tip that I have told many people when I've done informationals is, especially if you're shifting kind of mid-career or you have some work experience, think about how your background and the work that you've already done could be combined with the sustainability or whatever it is work that you're looking to do. So for me, I took communications and I turned that into sustainability reporting. And that kind of was a good mesh of the experience that I had. I had several classmates who were engineers and had backgrounds like that. And they took their MBA and then turned it into working in, solar and the renewable space. So thinking about how you can present yourself as a unique package with all of the experience that you have together, and not just how do I just get into sustainability and thinking that it's new, but think about all of it and how you can be the right fit for a new role.
And I'll just mention, and it's what Georgia mentioned earlier, but I think, just reach out to everyone and anyone and just talk to people, learn about what they do, build your network. I'm talking to students or people trying to break into the field, pivoting or starting their careers. at least like once a week. And it's, people were really kind to me when I was trying to start out. So I try to return the favor as much as I can. So I think people in this field generally are very happy to help. I mean, people are busy, so it's not always possible, but I think people are very generally happy to help. So I think just like reach out to folks, and the worst they could say is no, and you move on and keep talking to other folks. So.
That's a really positive way of thinking about it. I think one of my pieces of advice would be, don't be afraid to agitate within whatever space that you're in. If you don't find yourself in the sustainability field right away, we've had people join our sustainability team that just got really excited about something and wanted to make a change within the company, and then eventually pivoted their way over. So don't be afraid to find yourself in a different role and then just start pointing out problems and proposing solutions and working on those. That's a great way to get into the space too.
Great. Wow. Well, what a great conversation. Thank you all for joining us tonight, and thank you to our audience and for all the wonderful questions. This was our last panel as part of Cornell Business Impact Symposium, although on Saturday we do have our undergraduate impact investing competition. So you are welcome to join us for that. And we will also have a speaker at that event as well, Sarah Howe, who is going to talk about her career in impact investing. And you can register for that event at cbis2021.splashthat.com. So I hope you'll join us on Saturday. And once again, I want to thank all of our panelists for joining us here tonight. Thank you.